Hello, I'm Tony Guida. This is My New York. Whoever said a picture is worth 1,000 words wildly underestimated the impact of this one. Traffic gridlock on the Cross Bronx Expressway. On the one hand, so routine it has become banal. On the other, it symbolizes a city in transportation extremis. A new plan is afoot to transform transportation in New York. It is called Move New York, and it is the bold brainchild of Sam Schwartz, once called Gridlock Sam, now welcomed around the world as a transportation genius. Part 2 of our conversation with Sam Schwartz, next. I'm delighted to welcome back to the program Sam Schwartz. Good to see you. I know the people have been on tenterhooks since last week wondering what is the equality issue with what we've been talking about. What we're talking about is a city and many cities in this country that are transforming themselves from car dependent to other modes of transportation, millennials, young people, populating neighborhoods like in Williamsburg in this city, but in so many other examples in other cities, and bringing those back to life, and those people demanding other forms of transportation, bikes and other things. But there's a real equality issue involved here. Explain what it is and the problem solving it.
Well, part of the problem, is the concept of gentrification, where some people do get pushed out from some communities. So that in of itself is a problem if you don't have sufficient housing for lower income people in these communities. But there's also a strange other equality thing with transit systems that I've come across. And I have a chapter in my book called Tuxedos on the Subway.
Exactly.
And where that comes about, I was sitting in a class at the University of Pennsylvania in 1969. My professor, Vukan Vucic, traveled the world, knew transit systems frontwards and back, was describing the transit systems of Paris, of Moscow. And when he was talking about Moscow, he said, in the Moscow subway system on a Saturday night, you could see a couple dressed to the nines, a man in a tuxedo, a woman in the gown, on their way to the opera.
In subway stations that look like opera houses.
Stations with chandeliers, with comfortable seating. And the professor, I was the only student from New York City, he kind of turns to me and says, can you imagine someone in a tuxedo in a New York City subway? So that's tuxedos on the subway. And what I soon realized in studying the matter is that if we view the transit system as being the transit system of the poor, it will reflect that. And we saw that in the United States. And if you go to Los Angeles and you ask a number of people, and if they're upper middle class or middle class, they'll say nobody rides the subway. And what they mean is nobody like them rides the subway, and the subway is for poor people. That's beginning to change in Los Angeles. So a subway system that thrives, a transit system that thrives, is a transit system in which the wealthy are riding it, the middle class, the poor are riding it, and therefore it gets funded. It becomes a front and center issue.
And that's the point. How do we arrive at a transportation system like that? Because the situation you've discussed in your book, Street Smart, Rise of Cities and the Fall of Cars, and the situation you're discussing now, gentrification, pushing the poorer people further and further out, means those people are either going to have to depend on cars, which we're trying to, or the enlightened professionals like you are trying to diminish, or transportation systems that will meet them halfway or better. And how do we get to this system where everybody, the rich, will look on it as a value, as an asset, at the same time as the less wealthy look at it as a need?
Well, anyone planning cities now has to take a step back from the traditional way of planning, because we already saw a shakeup, a dramatic shakeup. First, we saw the millennial change in the way they're driving. Second, we had the wave, and this is just this millennial, of the Ubers and the Lyfts and the Vias come along. And there's a third wave that's even more disruptive than any wave we've seen since World War II, and that's the autonomous vehicle.
Right,
now,
self-driving.
I mean, we could be dumb about it and let autonomous vehicles just take over and they'll just clog our streets, or we could be proactive and say, the place for autonomous vehicles is not so much in private transportation. And by the way, Bill Ford, the executive chairman of Ford, has said the same thing. It really is in transit. And the autonomous buses, and you could have twice as many buses at the same price. And you could also still preserve a lot of the jobs if the TWU and others get on board early with the autonomous vehicle revolution. So how do you take care of the people in the lower income communities? You make sure that they have access to, if they are pushed out of the very close communities. It was ironic if you looked at post-World War II, where people fled from, had the best transit service. And now people are flocking back to those communities with really good transit service. So we need to look out for the people that are pushed out. And that's part of the equality equation, and it's what planners have to start thinking about right now, because there's a revolution on its way.
And you've been thinking about it, and this revolution, and to try to revolutionize transportation in this city. You've come up with a plan called Move New York, which some people refer to as congestion pricing. I know you hate that term. You can use your term. But in thumbnail, what is Move New York? What is this plan, and what's its goal?
Most people watching the show will remember the Bloomberg Plan, 2007,
which
2008.
Was dead on arrival.
It was DOA. And I spent a number of years with the people that opposed the Bloomberg Plan and found out what were they complaining about. And the word that came up the most is it was unfair. And there were a lot of aspects to it. So I started to develop a plan that was fair, and the opposition was from the outer communities, where people said, we're already paying too much in tolls. Why add another toll?
And we're talking about adding tolls on the East River bridges, 59th Street, Williamsburg, Manhattan, Brooklyn, that have been for all time free, or at least we think.
Well, since 1911.
They were free. Yeah, 1911. Yeah,
1911. They're actually all built with tolls in mind.
Right, I forgot that.
But yes, Mayor William Gaynor, a popular move at the time, shortly after an assassination attempt on his life, but police claim there's no connection to it. But so how do you make a plan fair? Well, you look at going between the Bronx and Queens directly. Everybody has to pay a toll. There's no getting around it. You go from the Rockaways to Queens or to Brooklyn over the Gil Hodges Bridge, and you pay a toll. Everybody in a motor vehicle trying to leave the island of Staten Island or get to the island of Staten Island has to pay a toll. So what the Move New York plan first does is lowers the tolls on all these bridges. Every bridge in the Bronx, all 4 Bronx toll bridges, go down in price. They go down about 40 to 45% in price. Same thing between the Bronx and Queens. 5 out of 6 Queens bridges, all the Queens bridges that are tolled now go down in price. The Verrazano goes down in price. But we take the price that people are paying right now at the Throgs Neck and the Whitestone, and we apply that to the Queensboro Bridge, for example, where 40 to 50,000 cars a day hop off highways to use city streets, which is bad policy and does pollute and kill a few people along the way over the course of a year. We put the tolls on the Queensboro Bridge, electronic charging, no toll booths. Same thing at the Williamsburg, the Brooklyn, and we also do at 60th Street. So anybody coming into this cordon area is charged. Now, there's nothing new about this. First of all, it was conceived by William Vickery, a Columbia University professor who went on to win the Nobel Prize. London has been doing it for a dozen years now. successfully, and they expanded the area. Stockholm does it. Gothenburg is doing it. Milan has a version. Singapore and a dozen other cities.
Interesting that all the cities that have done this are not American cities.
There is not a single American city. However, there are some formats of it. San Francisco does some pricing with its parking system.
Those parts of the world, maybe we can just say, and go on to the next part of the plan. It probably never had the romance and the quote unquote all American love of the automobile that we have in the United States, which is why anything that seems to impact drivers adversely is very hard to do, like putting tolls on the East River bridges.
Yeah, exactly. And although it wasn't easy, I mean, each of these cities had a lot of battles to try to impose or to try to introduce a form of a congestion fee. But the United States is tougher, I agree.
We need to get to the point, though. The point of this is not to tick off drivers, which you're going to do and have done already as the news of the plan came out, but is to improve the transportation system. How?
Exactly. So it turns out a lot of revenue is raised through this. In addition, we have some fees for Ubers and taxis in the congestion zone. We raise almost $1.5 billion a year. If we
the plan raises $1.5 billion,
$1.5 billion, even after lowering all those tolls.
Yeah, I think that deserves being underlined. You put tolls on East River bridges, but you lower tolls everywhere else around New York City. So, and the net result, you believe, is $1.5 billion.
$1.5 billion, and that's been validated by
okay. And what do you do with that money? How does it get divvied up?
Well, there's a difference between that money and how Bloomberg would divvy it up, mostly going for transit. We take a quarter and we give it for roads and bridges, which desperately needed. Tony, you remember I had to close the Williamsburg Bridge. We talked about the West Side Highway collapsing. We really need that money. That brings the AAA, the Motor Trucking Association, both opponents to the Bloomberg plan, to the table, saying they want to work with us on it.
That's interesting because you've had some political traction support on this that is surprising. AAA is on board. They're supporting, right?
Yeah. The AAA sees that there is no revenue stream. The feds aren't coming to the rescue. Even the federal bill that recently got passed doesn't provide for any more money over a fairly low level that's been provided for the past 10 years. It's far less than the Bush plan, even in absolute dollars. So it's with inflation, it's roughly half of what we've been spending on transportation. So local governments have to solve their own problem. Local states have to solve their own problem. 21 states have introduced some kind of pricing mechanism, it could be through taxes or other fees, to deal with the fact that the federal government's not providing transportation money to the same extent. The 3 states that are glaringly absent from that are the tri-state region, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Those 3 states have not dealt with it on a state level, which is odd when you're seeing Iowa dealing with it, when you see cities like Los Angeles dealing with it. Los Angeles is building far more transit than we're building. Salt Lake City is ranked one of the best transit cities now. And that has had a Republican mayor forever. Oklahoma City wants to do a streetcar. Again, a Republican mayor. So it's not at the very local level, it cuts across the political spectrum. But New York has not come out with a way of raising additional revenue and improving its transportation system.
Well, and anybody who has lived in this city, I mean, you're a New Yorker, you're from Brooklyn, I'm from the Bronx. The subways and buses in this city have always, traditionally, chronically been underfunded, especially in terms of maintenance. And at least this seeks to address that with, you say you're raising $1.5 billion each year with this plan, and a quarter of it's going to go to road transportation needs, and the rest is going to go to buses and subways, and perhaps other new forms of things like streetcars and whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah. When we're talking about some new transportation needs, we look at Hudson Yards, the extension of the number 7 line, which was largely paid by future dollars that will be earned from the real estate development. So this value capture approach is another way. So we support the Move New York plan raises a lot of money, but we also encourage the real estate community to get behind value capture as they did with Hudson Yards. And I'll tell you, the developers there are very happy. There's a whole city being built at Hudson Yards, and they don't mind the additional taxes from that. They'll be doing just fine. We see that as an opportunity. So Move New York can help build a lot of transit, can help maintain the transit system, which is really key, and you pointed that out, Tony. And value capture can allow us to expand the transit system.
I should make the point that this plan, Move New York, is not a government initiative. It's a private group that has come forth with this, I think, brilliant plan. And now we come to the politics. There's a phrase, if you've been around politics or covered politics like I have, getting things done is a lift. Could be a moderate lift, a heavy lift. This is the elephant, of the 800-pound gorilla of lifts politically, getting this done. I know you must have an optimistic view of it, but I wonder why, because, for instance, the governor hasn't gotten behind it yet, and if anybody needs to if it's going to happen, the governor's going to have to get behind.
Yeah, we already have about 50 elected officials at the city and the state level that are supporting the plan. So we do have some political support out there. The mayor, I believe the mayor will come out in support, but it's really the state. As you point out, it's the governor. We don't have Shelley Silver. We don't have Dean Skelos. Carl Hastie was an early supporter of a pricing scheme, and he believes in this whole fairness argument and equality. So we think he's going to be a real help to us. On the Republican side in the Senate, we think a number of the senators also see a need for improving
But there's a fellow named Cuomo. And the only comment I've seen, this plan came out in what, February or March of 2015?
14, yeah.
14, I'm sorry. Right. So it's been out there a while. And the only comment I've seen from Governor Cuomo on this is a comment that he made, the quote, "I don't know if we have the political support to pass it." Now, I guess having your own show gives you the right to perhaps editorialize a little, and I'm going to editorialize. I think that is a boldly disingenuous comment. Governor Cuomo saying, "I don't know if we have the political support to pass it." He is the political support. If he were to get on board, this would pass. So to say something like that, and I know you don't want to anger the governor, but how does that strike you?
Well, there were also other statements that the governor said. He said it was a good plan. He said it had merit.
It had merit.
You know, so I have to read between the lines. Obviously, we need the governor's support. And between the lines, the governor, not that he's green-lighted the project, the program, but he has not killed it. And that's a positive sign. So I have to look at positive signs right now, and I think this could become the Cuomo plan. I don't care if they call it the Schwartz plan. You know, let it be the Cuomo plan, and let him fund some of the pet projects he wants to fund. And I absolutely believe we should have a train that goes to LaGuardia Airport. I'd love to see a one-seat ride. But the governor has talked about a number of different transit programs that he'd like to see, the additional stops of Metro North in the Bronx, through Co-op City in the South Bronx. I would love it to become Andrew Cuomo's plan.
Well, any day he wants to pick up the phone and call you, or have you come to a meeting and say, "Okay, I'm putting my name on this." I mean, I suppose that's the day you'll go out and celebrate.
Yep.
What makes it such a toxic political, such a huge political lift? It's almost as if going anywhere near the idea of tolling those bridges on the East River is nuclear. Politicians run away from that. Where's the leadership? Why do they do that? Why is this so tough?
It's the easiest thing to stand right at the foot of a bridge with the bridge as a backdrop. And Tony, you've been in television for a long time, so you know the shot.
Right.
And to have an elected official say, "You're traveling, across here for free over my dead body. I won't allow anybody to charge you going across that bridge." Now, the name free bridge or the adjective, it's not free. I was the chief engineer of those bridges. Those bridges were crumbling. I had to close the Williamsburg Bridge. We've spent $3 to $4 billion of public money because we did not have a dedicated funding source for those bridges.
Right.
So the first part,
the fact is they have no toll.
That's right.
What your point is that they're not free because there's an awful lot of our tax money. We're subsidizing. You, me, every citizen of New York City is subsidizing that quote-unquote freeness.
And paying for it tenfold. Because instead of doing the basic maintenance, what really crippled the Williamsburg Bridge, what caused the West Side Highway to collapse, was corrosion. Corrosion's not a tough thing to solve. This is not rocket science. You clean the steel regularly. You coat it when you have to, meaning you paint it. We have never had to shut down a tolled facility on an emergency basis. It hasn't happened. But we shut the Williamsburg. We banned trains from the Manhattan Bridge because that was in danger of collapse. I closed the outer roadways of the Queensboro Bridge. Cables snapped, killing a tourist on the Brooklyn Bridge. How do we not get the message that these are not free bridges?
And the message that you've come up with in the Move New York plan is if we adopt a fair, as you call it, plan, that money will be there.
Yes, the first dollars go to basic maintenance. Basic maintenance is so cheap, so easy to do, and if you have a dedicated funding source, which we had till 1911, and then we seem to forget after World War II how to maintain our bridges, you won't have to replace a steel beam. Mm-hmm. The steel that's protected, I inspected steel on the Brooklyn Bridge from the 1870s, installed in the 1870s, and in 110 years later, it was in a protected area, that steel was perfectly good. Steel can last perhaps 1,000 years if we just treat it
if
well.
It's maintained. Let me raise, or at least repeat, some of the objections, at least that I've heard, to the plan from citizens, not the politicians. I heard somebody say the economy, presumably a middle-class resident of New York, saying the economy has brutalized us. We can't afford another regressive tax. What do you say to that?
What's regressive is that we're charging all those people to go between Brooklyn and to go between the Bronx and Queens. What's regressive is when we charge people in the outer areas who have no transit options. That's regressive. This is a progressive measure. The people who will be getting the benefit are the lowest income or lower income people riding the subway system. Mm-hmm. If you drive into Manhattan, by definition, you're usually not the lowest income. There's always the porter that drives into Midtown. Where do they park? I mean, you have to pay $60 to $80 to park nowadays. So it's not a regressive measure. It's a progressive measure that distributes the money in the fairest way.
And others looking at this in objection say, okay, it's going to become a lot more expensive to come into Manhattan. So what we're going to wind up with is a part of the city in which only the rich will drive.
And that hasn't happened in Stockholm. It hasn't happened in London, where only the rich come in. It may be people that are driving tend to be higher income, but that's already the case now. And it becomes a city that's a lot more livable. London's been able to do wonderful things with its streets with less traffic. The same thing with Stockholm. Think about all those opportunities. Remember, in our last show, we talked about how we widened the roadways to accommodate the cars, and the pedestrians are relegated to narrow sidewalks. Walk along Lexington Avenue. Think about that experience on the sidewalk.
It's a terrible experience.
What if we were able to widen the sidewalks again? And it unleashes so many more opportunities to make the quality of life better. But even if you drive, the beauty of the plan is your experience will be better as a driver. Right now, any day, if we were in a helicopter and we were looking over the Long Island Expressway, we would watch an army of cars getting off at Van Dam Street, snaking their way through Sunnyside to go across a free bridge, leaving a highway rather than take a highway to the Midtown Tunnel. That's crazy. And the bigger you are, the more we invite you in. The bigger the truck you are. Trucks that try to skirt Manhattan, they have to pay a toll, and that toll could be as much as $100. It's already $86 for a five-axle truck to skirt the city. But if you drive right through Manhattan, you pay $0. That's bizarre.
Right. Well, I think folks watching this program should study the Move New York plan. It's not that complicated. And I think you ought to contact your elected officials and say, hey, you know what? We're gonna put more tolls on. Some people are gonna have to pay more money, but overall, the plan makes sense. And it's part of the thinking of this book, Street Smart, by Sam Schwartz. And I want to also say that a chance to ask you, if you were the czar and you had all the money and you could do whatever you want, in about a minute or so, tell us a couple of projects you would do in New York City.
I would take the Belt Parkway and make it into an expressway. It's crazy that we have no truck routes through Brooklyn except for the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway and the Gowanus that is crumbling. We have so many trucks that come from across the Verrazano that want to go to Kennedy Airport in Long Island. Let's build an expressway. We put the trucks on streets now, and we put the cars on parkways. That's a Moses from the old days. That was Moses thinking. So we need to do that. We haven't built a bridge to the Central Business District since 1909. I would build 3 pedestrian bike bridges, one from Brooklyn stopping off at Governor's Island. I would build another one from Greenpoint to Hunters Point, Long Island City, over to the Technion campus, where we're going to have a beautiful Cornell Technion campus where students could then walk to Manhattan. I would put it right in the heart of Midtown Manhattan. There's a little outboard road that was once built there, and I was an engineer involved in that. I could use that as a platform. And another one from Hoboken, Jersey City.
Man is full of ideas. Many of them are in this book. I love one, for instance, about a streetcar across 42nd east to west. Anyway, it's been a delight, Sam. Nice to see you. Thanks for being here.
Great to see you, Tony.
And we'll see you next week.